7 car bombs exploded today in Baghdad in what appears to have been a coordinated assault that may have been timed to this week's anniversary of the founding of Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party in Syria in 1947. According to Reuters and the Associated Press, as many as 37 Iraqis are dead, more than 100 are wounded. The surge in violence, a reminder, of course, of two things. First, the war in Iraq rages on, even as it falls from the American headlines. And guess which war-torn country that has 140,000 or so U.S. troops stationed there still has no ambassador from the United States? President Obama nominated this man, Chris Hill, to be our ambassador to Iraq on March 11th. That was 26 days ago. Mr. Hill is still waiting for confirmation, mainly because of Republican Senator Sam Brownback, heretofore best known for dropping out of the 2008 presidential race before it even was 2008. Also for his campaign stump speech having a line in it about killing something with a dull axe. Mr. Brownback does not think that Chris Hill is right for the job, apparently. But instead of just voting against him, Senator Brownback has been using procedural techniques in the Senate to hold up the vote on him altogether. You know who else hasn't yet been able to take their appointed job in the administration? Tammy Duckworth. As we reported here on Friday, the helicopter pilot, decorated Iraq War vet, double amputee, who ran the Office of Veterans Affairs in Illinois and is renowned for having done so. She was nominated on March 16th to serve in the Veterans Administration. Ms. Duckworth, a nationally known and respected veterans advocate, I shall reiterate, has not been able to get started at her new job because of little-known North Carolina Republican Senator Richard Burr. He has decided to delay a vote on Duckworth's nomination. We contacted Senator Burr's office today to find out if he was ready yet to explain publicly why he is holding up this nomination. Sadly, the answer is still no. And of course, while we're on the subject of people who are not able to do the jobs they've been nominated to do, let's not forget Don Johnson, nominated to run the Office of Legal Counsel on February 11th, but still facing Republican opposition, in part, supposedly, because she worked at an abortion rights organization at one point in her career, but also for her outspoken stance against the torture memos written by the previous inhabitants of the office that she's now been appointed to lead. Also, Harold Koh, nominated late last month to be the State Department's legal counsel. Professor Koh also faces GOP opposition. He also, coincidentally enough, has been vocal in his criticism of the Bush administration's policies on torture. So is this just a collection of quirky individual Republican senators blocking nominations for their own quirky individual Republican senator reasons? Or is this a coordinated, quirky Republican Senate strategy? Are nominees being held hostage politically? And if so, what are Republicans demanding in return for releasing them? Joining us now is Chris Hayes, Washington editor for The Nation. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Rachel.
Is this a lot of high-profile nominees being held up all at once? It seems like a lot to me.
You know, it's very difficult to make these apples-to-apples comparisons because the political context changed so much from, say, 92 to 2000. What I think it's safe to say is that for a very early in a president's term, particularly with a very popular president, there's a tremendous amount of resistance. I mean, I think if you go back to 2000, you'll see that despite the fact that progressive activists were really quite frustrated with the Democratic senators for allowing a lot of deference broadly to to President Bush's pick, that the Democrats really did allow a lot of those picks through, even when they had some fairly strong objections. John Ashcroft is the one that comes to mind. And I think we've seen an evolution in that process such that we're seeing far more obstructionism now from the GOP.
Scott Horton wrote a piece on the Daily Beast today, Chris, that cites an anonymous Justice Department source saying that the Republicans are blocking Don Johnson and Harold Koh specifically in order to try to give the Republicans leverage to stop the Obama administration from releasing more of these Bush torture memos. Does that make sense to you as a strategy? Is that resonating with your reporting and what you've learned about these obstructionists?
Well, it's not surprising at all. I mean, I think it's outrageous, if I can editorialize for a moment. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you know, the Senate is entrusted with a constitutional duty to advise and consent. They are there to advise and consent on the qualifications of a nominee. That nominee is not there to be used as a pawn, essentially to protect ex post facto the possible crimes of the administration that preceded it. So I don't see any sort of source in the Constitution for this kind of activity. But the fact of the matter is, the Senate imbues a tremendous amount of power and leverage in the minority. And what we're seeing is that power and leverage being used maximally by the GOP members of the Senate to get whatever they can out of this administration.
Well, let's talk about the political cost of that then. I mean, looking specifically, just as an example, at the Tammy Duckworth nomination, Richard Burr from North Carolina is holding her up. Literally, he's making no public statements about why he's holding her up. What could possibly be the political advantage to him to holding up this nomination that would outweigh the cost to him of becoming known as the guy who held up Tammy Duckworth's nomination, this female Iraq vet, helicopter pilot, double amputee, veterans advocate legend? I mean, I don't even understand how the political calculus can work in his favor here.
Well, I don't either. I mean, broadly speaking, the reason that you see these battles over nominees is the fact that it often offers a very cost-free way to essentially kind of throw some chits to members of your political coalition. So, you know, the neocons that are up in arms that Chris Hill has a temerity to actually negotiate, as one would want a diplomat to do, they're essentially being satiated by holding up Chris Hill. What ends up happening is because these aren't issues that at the end of the day the average voter is going to go to the polling booth and vote on, it becomes a kind of interest group versus interest group battle. So the fact of the matter is, if veterans groups in North Carolina make enough of a stink about Tammy Duckworth, then I think we'll see Richard Burr relent ultimately. But it really is, I think you put your finger on it. It's a cost-benefit political calculation, and it's a fairly narrow one, because this is not something that's going to have kind of broad political resonance outside of a fairly small group of concerned parties.
And certainly it won't, as long as the Democrats continue their policy of not squawking about this at all. Chris Hayes, Washington editor for The Nation. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Thank you, Rachel.